I never thought I'd be sharing my story like this, but here we are. My name is Tom, and I was married to Jessica for 6 years. We had what I thought was a solid relationship, good communication, shared interests, and a mutual respect for one another. But everything started to unravel when I had to undergo surgery for a sports injury. I was out of commission for weeks, and that's when the cracks in our marriage began to show. At first, Jess was supportive. She took care of me, made sure I was comfortable, and promised to be there for me while I healed. But as the weeks dragged on, I noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She became distant, spending more time on her phone and less time engaging with me. I brushed it off as stress. After all, dealing with a husband in recovery isn't an easy task. I wanted to believe she was just overwhelmed. But then there were the little things. The way she'd suddenly get a text and smile, that forced laugh she would give when I tried to crack a joke. There was a shift in our intimacy too. In our early years together, sex was a regular part of our lives, but during my recovery it became almost non-existent. I tried to initiate things, but she would always find an excuse. She was tired, had a headache, or just wanted to binge-watch some show. I thought maybe it was just the stress of the situation, but deep down, I started to feel uneasy. The tipping point came one afternoon when I was finally able to get up and move around a bit. I had a follow-up appointment and I was feeling pretty good about myself, only to come home to an empty house. Jess was supposed to be there, but she was. Instead, I found her purse on the kitchen table and instinct kicked in. I know I shouldn't have, but I couldn't help myself. I rummaged through it and found her phone. It was unlocked, and that's when I saw it, messages with someone named Mark. I read them and my stomach dropped. The messages were flirty at first, innocuous enough to seem harmless, but as I scrolled further it became clear that something was very wrong. They were planning to meet, talking about last night and how much fun they had. I felt sick. Here I was, recovering from surgery, and my wife was out having sex with another man. I confronted her as soon as she walked in the door. I threw the phone down on the kitchen counter and demanded answers. The look on her face was a mix of shock and guilt. She stammered and tried to come up with excuses, but the damage was done. Jess claimed it was just a phase, that she never meant to hurt me and that I was overreacting. How could she say that? I had been vulnerable, relying on her support, and she was betraying me behind my back. The emotional roller coaster was intense. I went from rage to disbelief, then spiraled into sadness. I felt like I was in some surreal nightmare, watching my life unravel. I couldn't believe that the person I trusted the most was lying to me, and all while I was healing from surgery. I was angry at her, but I was also angry at myself for not seeing the signs earlier. I remember packing around the room, feeling lost and betrayed. The world felt as if it was spinning out of control. As days passed, I grappled with my feelings. I wanted to scream, cry, and punch something all at once, but I kept it together, at least in front of Jess. I tried to talk to her, hoping to salvage what was left of our marriage, but it felt like talking to a wall. She would deflect, change the subject, or say I was being too dramatic. It was infuriating. I had to make a decision. Could I forgive her? Did I even want to try? The idea of her reconciliation with another man was too fresh, too raw. I knew I had to think clearly and not act out of anger, but that was easier said than done, especially with the betrayal still stinging. I finally decided I needed to figure out what I wanted. Jess may have thought this was just a phase, but for me, it was a life-altering betrayal. I couldn't just brush it off. I needed time to think, to heal from more than just my physical injuries. I started to put together a plan to confront her again, to lay everything on the table, and to figure out if there was even a path forward for us. But how? How do you navigate the wreckage of a marriage built on trust when that trust has been shattered? The next few weeks would be critical. Would I choose to fight for this love, or was it time to walk away? One thing was for sure, I was going to stand up for myself, and soon. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself in a state of limbo. My physical recovery was progressing. I was able to walk without a limp, and my strength was slowly returning. But mentally, I was a mess. I spent a lot of time alone, replaying conversations in my head, dwelling on what went wrong and questioning every decision I had made in the years we were together. Jessica continued to act as if nothing had changed, throwing casual smiles my way, preparing dinner, and asking about my day. It was infuriatingly normal. I felt like I was living with a stranger. Whenever I'd catch a glimpse of her, my heart would fill with resentment. How could she move on so easily while I was still reeling from her betrayal? I began seeking solace in my friends. I shared bits and pieces of what I was going through, though I didn't disclose the whole truth. Things are just a bit rocky, I would say, hoping they wouldn't press for details. However, one evening my best friend, Mike, noticed how off I was and encouraged me to share more. "Dude, you need to talk about it," he said after I let out a frustrated sigh during a basketball game. "Holding it in isn't going to help. What's going on with Jess?" I hesitated, but after a few minutes of back and forth, I spilled it all. The surgery, the recovery, and the eventual discovery of her affair. Mike's reaction was immediate. "Are you serious? She did that while you were laid up," he exclaimed. The anger in his voice mirrored the emotions I had been feeling. "You deserve better, man. You shouldn't have to put up with this." Hearing Mike's support was a relief. It felt good to have someone validate my feelings. As I recounted the details, I realized how deeply this was affecting not just me, but my relationships with others. I could sense the empathy in Mike's eyes as he listened, and it felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Over the next few days, I began to develop a framework for how I wanted to handle things. I was done being passive. It was time to confront Jess again. I wanted to create a space where we could talk honestly and openly about what had happened, no more excuses. I needed to understand her motivations, her thought process, and whether she thought she could simply brush this affair under the rug. One evening, I decided to set the stage. I asked Jess to sit down with me after dinner, my heart racing. I took a deep breath as she joined me on the couch, her face still plastered with that casual, carefree smile. It made my stomach churn. "Jess, I need to talk to you about something serious," I started, trying to keep my tone even. She looked at me with mild concern, her smile fading slightly. "What's wrong?" I cleared my throat, feeling a rush of adrenaline. "I've been thinking a lot about our relationship, especially since everything that's happened. I want to talk about you and Mark." Her eyes widened slightly, and I could see her calculating her response. "Tom, I told you." "No, you didn't tell me anything. You lied. You lied while I was recovering from surgery, and I deserve to know why." My voice had raised, but I couldn't help it. I was furious. Jess shifted uncomfortably, her facade of calm crumbling. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just a mistake, okay?" "A mistake? You were planning to meet him, Jess. You were texting him, flirting with him. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." Her eyes darted away from mine, and I could see her struggling to come up with something that would excuse her actions. "I was lonely. I thought you'd never heal. I just wanted to feel desired again," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper as she avoided eye contact. "Desired? So you thought cheating was the solution? You really want me to believe that?" I couldn't help but scoff. The audacity. "I didn't mean to hurt you. Yet you did, Jess. This isn't just about feeling desired. This is about trust. You broke that trust, and now I'm left here trying to piece together what's left of our marriage. You think saying sorry fixes everything?" The conversation turned into a back and forth that felt like a boxing match. I threw every question I had at her, and she just deflected, retaliating with weak justifications. Each attempt at justification only fueled my anger further. I wanted to scream and cry, but I felt an odd sense of strength growing within me. I was taking control of the narrative of my life again. Eventually, Jess resorted to tears, claiming she was sorry, that she wanted to fix things. But I felt no sympathy for her. I had been the one who had suffered physically and emotionally. "Do you even understand what you've done? You think tears and apologies will fix everything, that I'll just forget about the fact that you were with someone else?" She nodded, still crying, but I could see the defiance in her eyes. "I just want a chance to make it right." "Do you even care if I want to make it right?" I challenged her, my voice low but firm. "Because it feels like you're more interested in saving your own skin." A heavy silence hung in the air. I didn't know how to move past this. Jess reached for my hand, begging me to listen and promising that she would do anything to repair the damage. But I was done with empty promises. I had to protect myself and my heart. As she sat there, tears streaming down her face, I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. It was time to decide whether I wanted to invest in this marriage or walk away from the pain. I needed a plan moving forward, but for now, I had to step back and reflect on what I truly wanted. Would I fight for a love that seemed so broken, or was it time to cut my losses and reclaim my life? I didn't have the answers yet, but I knew one thing. I was done being a victim in my own story. I spent the next few days in a haze, trying to come to terms with everything that had happened. After that confrontation with Jess, I didn't feel any sense of relief. Instead, I felt more lost than ever. I was grappling with questions that had no easy answers. Could I trust her again? Did I even want to try? During my moments of solitude, I found myself reflecting on the foundation of our marriage. What did I really love about Jess? Was it the life we had built together or the person she had become? The memories flooded back. The nights we spent talking until dawn, the adventures we embarked on together, and the laughter we shared. But now, it all felt tainted. It was hard to separate the person I fell in love with from the one who betrayed me. I began to spend even more time with Mike. He was a sounding board through my small moments of clarity and confusion. One evening, as we sat on his porch, beers in hand, I laid it all out. I just don't know, man. Part of me wants to fight for it. I mean, we've built a life together. But another part of me feels like I'm just setting myself up for more heartbreak. Mike nodded thoughtfully. You have to think about what you want, Tom. If you don't feel like you can rebuild that trust, it might be better to step away. You deserve to be happy and respected. His words resonated with me, and I began to look inward, attempting to separate my emotions from the situation. I didn't want to be the guy who stayed in a relationship out of fear of loneliness or the unknown. I was done being reactive. It was time to be proactive about my life. That Saturday, I decided to take a day for myself. I needed to clear my head, so I went for a long hike at a local nature reserve. The fresh air and the solitude helped me find some clarity. As I walked along the trails, I remembered the way Jess used to join me on these hikes, her laughter echoing in the woods. It hurt, but I also realized that I couldn't keep comparing my life now to how it used to be. Things had changed, and I had to accept that. On my way back, I found myself at a coffee shop. An old friend from college, Emma, worked there. She recognized me immediately and came over. We chatted casually at first, reminiscing about old times. I felt a sense of comfort in our conversation, a reminder that life had good moments, even amidst chaos. Hey, it's been ages. How's life treating you? She asked, her eyes sparkling with genuine interest. I hesitated before giving her the rundown. I didn't want to unload my problems on her, but I couldn't help it. Well, actually, I'm dealing with some pretty heavy stuff right now. My wife cheated on me while I was recovering from surgery. Her expression shifted to empathy. Oh, Tom, I'm so sorry to hear that. That's really rough. As we talked, I felt a sense of relief in opening up about my pain. I didn't feel judged or pitied. Rather, it was a healthy outlet to spill my thoughts and emotions. Emma offered advice and support, and though we hadn't spoken in years, it was like we had never lost touch. Life's too short to be unhappy, you know. You deserve to be with someone who values you, she said softly. The conversation planted a seed in my mind. I had been so focused on Jess, on what went wrong. But what about me? What did I want for my future? I had spent years putting her first, but now it was time to put myself on the priority list. Returning home, I found Jess in the living room, her eyes glued to the television. I took a deep breath, feeling resolved. It was time for another conversation, and this time it would be different. Jess, can we talk? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Sure, what's up? She replied, her gaze still on the screen. I sat down across from her, my heart pounding. I've been thinking a lot about us and what we want moving forward. I need to know if you're serious about making things right. She turned off the TV, finally giving me her full attention. Of course, Tom. I've been thinking about that too. Have you? I pressed, because every time we talk it feels like you're more interested in apologizing than actually addressing what happened. Actions speak louder than words, Jess. I'm trying. she insisted, frustration creeping into her voice. I know I messed up, but I want to fix this. Wanting to fix things isn't enough. I need to see that you're willing to work for it. We've built a life together, but right now it feels like I'm fighting alone. Jess looked away, her expression shifting to shame. What do you want from me? I want honesty for starters. I need you to be transparent with me. If we're going to rebuild trust, that means I need to know everything, the truth, no matter how painful it is. She opened her mouth to speak but hesitated. Okay, I'll tell you everything, I promise. But please understand that I made a mistake in a moment of weakness. It doesn't mean I don't love you. I sat back, processing her words. For the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe there was a path forward, but it was going to take work from both of us. I needed to see her commitment and willingness to be vulnerable, just like I had begun to open up to my friends about my feelings. The conversation continued, and we began to peel back the layers of our relationship. I realized I had to allow myself to be vulnerable too. It was a long road ahead, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was in control of my choices. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to fight for my happiness, whatever that looked like. Whether that meant rebuilding my marriage or moving on, I was finally ready to confront the future. It was my life, and I intended to take the reins back. In the days following my intense conversation with Jess, I felt a mix of cautious optimism and lingering doubt. We agreed to take things one step at a time, dedicating ourselves to rebuilding our relationship. Jess promised she would be open and honest, and I made it clear that I needed to see real effort from her side. We set up weekly check-in sessions where we could discuss our feelings, expectations, and any lingering resentments. It felt like a good step forward, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was only the beginning. I was operating in a state of careful vigilance, ready to catch any sign that she might slip back into her old behavior. That week, Jess seemed determined to prove herself. I watched as she made an effort to be more present, initiating conversations about our future and even suggesting a weekend getaway to clear our heads. Part of me was relieved. Maybe this was a turning point. But another part of me remained skeptical. It was difficult to fully trust her again, and I knew it would take time. As the weekend approached, I found myself about to engage in another big step, spending time away together, something we hadn't done since before everything fell apart. I felt a twinge of excitement, but it was heavily laced with anxiety. What if it was just a facade? What if we had created this illusion of moving forward while the real issues were still buried beneath the surface? We drove to a cozy cabin in the woods that Jess had reserved. The scenery was beautiful, and for a brief moment I felt a flicker of hope. We even laughed over little things, like the way the GPS misled us twice, and how Jess insisted on bringing her ridiculously oversized bag of snacks. It was nice to feel a semblance of normalcy. But as night fell, the weight of our past loomed over us like a dark cloud. We settled around the fire pit outside, the crackling flames casting warm light over our faces. Jess had prepared some s'mores, and for a moment, we were just two people enjoying each other's company. Still, I kept glancing at her, waiting for any sign that she might retreat into her old self. Tom, she started, breaking the comfortable silence. I know things have been rough and I really want to make things right. I just need you to know how serious I am about this. I nodded, still feeling the tension inside me. I appreciate that, Jess, but it's going to take time for me to heal. I'm not sure I trust you yet. I understand, she replied, her eyes sincere. I don't expect everything to go back to normal overnight. I just hope we can find a way back to each other, to what we used to have. As she spoke, I couldn't help but remember the vibrant love we once shared. My heart ached at the thought of losing that connection forever. But then a harsher truth struck me. That relationship was built on trust, and right now that trust was shattered. Later that night, as we lay in bed, I felt restless. Jess turned toward me, brushing her fingers against my arm. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "I'm just thinking," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "About us, about everything that's happened. I know I messed up," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "But I want to fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." I wanted to believe her, I really did. But then I recalled the conversations we had, the empty promises she had made before. What if this was just another cycle of words like the ones I had heard before? It felt exhausting to keep questioning her intentions. Jess, I need to see more than just words, I told her, choosing my words carefully. I need to see actions. I need to feel safe to love you again without the fear of betrayal hanging over my head. Her expression shifted to determination. I'll prove it to you, Tom. I swear I will. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, contemplating what it would take for me to feel secure again. I couldn't ignore the gnawing anxiety that settled in my gut. For the first time, I was becoming acutely aware of how fragile our relationship had become. The following days at the cabin were filled with a mix of uncomfortable conversations and glimpses of hope. Jess was trying to demonstrate her commitment, but I constantly found myself on guard. Every time she stepped out of the room, I'd wonder if she was texting someone else. I recognized that it was unhealthy, but the fear of being blindsided again consumed me. One evening, as we sat on the porch, I noticed her phone light up with a notification. My heart raced as I watched her pick it up. She glanced at the screen, and for a split second I could see her expression change. Was it guilt? Was it fear? "Who's that?" I asked, unable to hold back my frustration. She hesitated, glancing away before telling me it was just a friend from college. "Nothing important," she assured me, but I wasn't convinced. "Jess, if we're going to move forward, you need to be fully transparent. I can't keep doing this, waiting for something to happen." "I promise it's nothing. You can trust me," she replied, but the way her eyes shifted told me otherwise. I was aware that trust was a two-way street, but I couldn't help but feel like she was hiding something. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I didn't want to interrogate her, but I was desperate for clarity. As I lay awake, I made a decision. I would take a closer look at the situation, but I would approach it differently this time. Instead of acting out of anger, I needed to gather information on my terms, calmly, rationally. Over the next few days, I began observing her more closely. I watched for signs of any lingering deceit, taking mental notes without alerting her to my suspicions. I knew it wasn't the healthiest approach, but trust was something that had to be earned back, and I wasn't ready to blindly accept her reassurances. One evening, after Jess fell asleep, I grabbed her phone from the bedside table. I hesitated, feeling a mix of guilt and resolve, but I had to know the truth. As I scrolled through her messages, my heart raced, each notification feeling like a drumbeat leading to an inevitable confrontation. I was prepared for whatever I might find, but as I dug deeper, there was nothing suspicious, no recent texts with Mark and no signs of deceit. I felt a pang of disappointment mixed with relief. Maybe Jess was genuinely trying to change, but where did that leave me? I was still grappling with the fact that I had to go through her phone to feel secure. This wasn't the foundation of a healthy relationship. As the night wore on, I realized I was at a crossroads. I could either choose to confront Jess about my findings or give her the benefit of the doubt and try to trust her again. It was a delicate balance, and I knew that whatever path I chose would define the direction of our relationship moving forward. Ultimately, it came down to a choice. Would I allow fear and doubt to dictate my actions, or would I trust in the possibility of change? It was time to make a decision about how I wanted to move forward, either embracing hope or stepping away from the pain. I had to weigh my options carefully, as the next steps would determine not just our future, but also my own emotional well-being. The days following my late-night phone snooping felt surreal. I was still wrestling with the choice I had to make. Despite the lack of evidence against Jess, I couldn't shake the feeling that trust was not something that could be rebuilt overnight. Each time I looked at her, I felt a conflict brewing inside me. There was love, but there was also pain and suspicion. Our weekend at the cabin eventually came to an end, and we returned to our day-to-day lives. Jess seemed hopeful, often bringing up plans for the future. A vacation, a new hobby we could take up together. It was refreshing to hear her enthusiasm, but with that enthusiasm came the nagging voice inside my head, reminding me of the betrayal that had shattered my perception of our life together. One evening after work, I came home to find Jess cooking dinner. The aroma of garlic and herbs wafted through the house, and for a moment it felt like old times. I walked into the kitchen and she turned around, her face lighting up when she saw me. "Hey, I made your favorite," she said, smiling. "Thanks, it smells amazing," I replied, forcing a smile back. As we sat down to eat, Jess began sharing her day with enthusiasm, recounting stories about different coworkers and funny moments from her job. I tried to engage, but I found my mind drifting. I was still stuck on the idea that everything could change in a heartbeat. I wanted to be happy, to feel secure, but the ghost of her infidelity still loomed large. After dinner, I decided to bring up the topic of our relationship again. "Jess, I think we need to talk about where we stand. I appreciate everything you've done to try and fix things, but it still feels fragile to me," I said cautiously. She nodded, her expression serious. "I get that. I want us to be strong again. I know I messed up and I want to make it right. Then I need you to be completely honest with me. No more excuses or vague explanations. If we're going to heal, I need complete transparency, and that includes everything past and present," I stated firmly, trying to convey the weight of my words. "Okay, I can do that. Just ask me anything," she replied, her voice steady. I took a deep breath. "First, I want to know why you felt drawn to Mark in the first place. What was missing for you in our marriage that made you seek it elsewhere?" Her eyes dropped to her plate as she contemplated the question. I don't know, I did of it as cheating at first. I thought it was just flirting. I got caught up in the excitement of feeling wanted again. But I realize now how wrong that was," she admitted. I could see the regret in her eyes, and for a moment I felt a flicker of compassion. "It's not just about feeling wanted, Jess. It's about love, trust, and commitment. You know that now, right?" "Yes, I do. And I want to prove it to you," she insisted, her voice rising with determination. "But I need you to meet me halfway. I can't do this alone." I paused, absorbing her words. "Okay, so what does that look like for you? What do you need from me?" "I need you to be open too. I want us to communicate better. Maybe we could find a counselor, someone who can help us navigate this together," she suggested. I considered her proposal. Therapy had been a topic we discussed before, but I had hesitated out of pride. I didn't want to admit that we needed help, but now it felt like a reasonable step forward. "I'm open to that. I think it could help us find common ground again." As we talked, Jess shared more about her feelings of inadequacy during my recovery, how she felt isolated and alone. It was clear that the surgery had affected her as much as it had affected me, though she had buried those feelings beneath her actions. I could see the vulnerability in her eyes, and for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe we could work through this together. After a few weeks of heartfelt conversations and taking small steps toward rebuilding our relationship, we finally sought therapy. The first session was daunting, filled with awkward silences and nervous laughter as we shared our story with the therapist. But as we delved deeper, it became clear that we both had work to do. We learned to express our feelings more openly and honestly. With each session, I found myself softening toward Jess. I started to see her as a person who also felt pain, not just as the woman who had betrayed me. It was a difficult transition, but we began to navigate our vulnerability together. However, just as I was starting to feel hopeful, an unexpected twist threw me off balance. One afternoon while I was working from home, I received a notification on my phone, a text from Jess. It was a picture of her looking radiant, sent from a party she was attending. The caption read, "Wish you were here, love." My heart sank. I wasn't aware she had plans, and it brought back the anxiety of feeling left out. Instead of letting it simmer, I decided to reach out. "Where are you?" I texted back, trying to keep my tone neutral. She replied almost instantly, telling me she was at a friend's birthday party. "It's a small gathering, just some old friends catching up. I promise I'll be home soon." I took a deep breath, feeling the familiar knot of fear tightening in my stomach. I had to remind myself that Jess was working on being transparent. But the voice in my head was relentless, whispering worries about whether she was really being honest with me this time. After a few hours, Jess finally returned home. I attempted to act normal, but I couldn't shake the unease. "How was the party?" I asked, forcing a smile. "It was fun. I caught up with Some old friends, and it felt nice to connect with them again, she said, her eyes lighting up. Did you have any drinks? I asked, unable to keep the skepticism out of my voice. Just a couple, I promise I wasn't out of control. I wouldn't do that to you, she reassured me, but I noticed her voice was slightly defensive. I fought against my instincts, reminding myself to trust her. I'm glad you had fun. It's good for you to get out and socialize. As the evening wore on, I struggled to shake the feeling of unease. I wanted to be supportive, but I couldn't help feeling like I was walking a tightrope. That night, I lay in bed next to Jess, but my mind was racing. I had to trust her, but the fear of being blindsided again was too fresh. I knew I had to confront these feelings head-on. Whatever path we chose, it was becoming increasingly clear that I couldn't continue to live in a state of constant doubt. I had to either trust Jess completely or find the strength to move forward without her. It was a defining moment, one that would determine the course of my future, and I realized whether I chose to stay or leave, it was ultimately about reclaiming my peace of mind. I would no longer be a victim of my circumstances. I would take control of my narrative, whatever that meant. In the days that followed the party, I found myself at a crossroads, both in my relationship with Jess and in my own emotional journey. The feelings of doubt continued to gnaw at me. I realized that no matter how much I wanted to trust her, I had to confront the fact that I was still deeply affected by her betrayal. If we were truly committed to moving forward together, I needed to take a stand, not just for our relationship but for my own mental health. After several sleepless nights, I made an appointment to speak with our therapist alone. I needed a safe space to untangle my thoughts and feelings, free from the pressures of keeping things together for Jess's sake. During the session, I poured out my heart. I want to trust her, I really do, but I also feel like I'm constantly on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's exhausting, I confessed, my voice trembling. The therapist nodded knowingly. It's completely valid to have those feelings after experiencing betrayal, Tom. Healing is not linear and it's okay to feel uncertain. Have you communicated these feelings to Jess? I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I've tried, but I don't want to hurt her more. I want to fix this, but I also know I can't keep living in this state of fear. That's understandable, she replied. But if you don't express your frustrations and fears, it can lead to resentment. You both need to feel safe discussing your concerns. I left that session with a newfound clarity. I realized that my peace of mind was my responsibility. I could no longer hold Jess solely accountable for our issues. I had to be accountable for my own feelings and decisions. That evening, I approached Jess after dinner. She was reading on the couch, and I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me as I sat down across from her. Jess, can we talk again? She put her book down and looked at me, her expression shifting to concern. Of course, what's on your mind? I've been doing a lot of thinking, especially after my therapy session, I began. I want to trust you. I want to believe that we can get through this. But I realized I need to be honest with you about how I feel. Okay, she said, her eyes searching mine for reassurance. I feel like I'm constantly worried about what you're doing when you're not with me. Even when you're out with friends, I can't shake the anxiety that I'll lose you again. It's draining and it's not fair to either of us. Jess nodded slowly, her expression shifting to understanding. I didn't realize it was affecting you so much, she said softly. I'm so sorry. I want to be better, I really do. I know you do, I replied, feeling the tension ease a little. But I also need to know that you're committed to this. I can't rebuild trust if I'm still left guessing. It's not about controlling you, but about finding a way to communicate better. I understand and I want to be transparent, she promised, her voice earnest. I'll share my plans and I'll check in with you more often. I want you to feel secure, Tom. I took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of relief and hope. That would help. I want to feel like we're moving forward together, but I can't do it if we keep tiptoeing around the issues. As we talked, it felt as though a weight had been lifted from both of our shoulders. We weren't just working on rebuilding our relationship. We were learning how to communicate our feelings, fears, and desires more openly. It was a small but significant step toward healing. We continued our therapy sessions together, and I found the courage to voice my concerns each time. Jess responded positively, showing genuine dedication to our progress. Slowly but surely, I began to trust her again. It wasn't easy. The scars of betrayal were still there, but we were both committed to the process. A few months later, I realized that this journey had transformed me in unexpected ways. I had learned the importance of vulnerability, not just for myself but for Jess too. I had faced my fears head-on instead of letting them dictate my actions, and in return Jess had stepped up in ways I didn't think were possible. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. "I'm glad we're in this together," I said, taking Jess's hand in mine. "I feel like we're actually moving forward now." "Me too," she replied, a warm smile spreading across her face. "I know we still have a long way to go, but I believe in us." I nodded, a sense of hope blossoming in my chest. I knew we would still encounter challenges, but I also knew we had the tools to face them together. We were learning to build a new foundation based on honesty, communication, and mutual respect. Looking back, I realized that this experience, while painful, had given me the strength to reclaim my life. It had taught me valuable lessons about love, trust, and the importance of prioritizing my own well-being. No matter what the future held, I was ready to face it, stronger and more resilient than before. As I glanced over at Jess, I was reminded that relationships require work from both parties. Healing takes time, but with commitment and open dialogue, it's possible to find a way back to each other, even after the darkest of times. In the end, it wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about growth, love, and the journey we chose to embark on together.